there's an idea or this belief that I've had, and it's kind of a controversial belief, I think, because so many of the debates that are going on in our culture right now kind of really stem from this belief. So I'm a little nervous to share it. But it's a belief that's become really fundamental and crucial to my own spirituality. And yet I struggle with it. I have a hard time even remembering it, and I have to continually remind myself. And lastly, I think that this belief is really necessary for us as a species. If we're going to really continue to thrive on this planet, we're going to need to figure this out. So I'm going to share it with you. And this is a belief, you ready? That you and I are much more alike than we are different. And I know how controversial that is, especially today, politically, right? Or when it comes to religion, or when we look at, the world on a global scale, country to country. It's so hard for us, right, to realize that, to look across the aisle or across the world and say, are we much more alike than we're different? I mean, I wonder if aliens reveal themselves to us, would we finally get it? Would we finally be like, okay, that thing is not, that's a gray, small, we're the same and that thing's different. But then even then, we probably should figure that out and go, hey, we're still more alike than that, than different, But what's interesting is, scientifically speaking, you and I, genetically, we are actually 60% identical to a banana. So we're it's true. It's true. We're 85% genetically the same as a mouse, 95% genetically the same as a chimpanzee, and 99.9% genetically the same as every other human being. Now, sometimes I get it. You're probably like, I relate more to a banana than I do to that, So how do we work on this? We need empathy, just like Brene said. And like she said, what empathy is it's saying, I see myself in you. And that really stops our judgment. Because when we can look at someone and say, I've been through that, or I know what it's like to fall on your face and try to pick yourself back up, or to ask for help. That's how we stop judging. And yet our culture often can be not empathetic, but apathetic, very quick to judge. I mean, these days it feels like it's a dangerous time to express ourselves, especially on social media, without fear of people judging what you're saying. And so what happens is there's this distance that's created. And apathy, I think, really thrives on distance because it's really hard to look someone in the face and cast a judgment, but it's pretty easy the more distance there is. And yet connection, which creates empathy, connection actually feels kind of dangerous. It's pretty vulnerable to be connected. So how do we create connection? I think one of the most powerful ways, at least I've found in my life, is through story. Story creates empathy. Story connects us to one another. Story connects us to universal truths. I mean, think about all the movies that we watch, and we connect to something in the characters. Even if we can't relate to every aspect of that character, we can see parts of ourselves in that character. Like, for example, I'm not a big green ogre, but the first time I saw Shrek, I thought, I understand what it's like to feel like no one in the world understands you, See, story turns the universal truth into the particular. And we talked about this at Christmas time. The Jesus narrative is just one of the ways that the universal finds its way into the particular. In John 1:14, it says the Word became flesh. And I think one way to look at that is that the abstract became tangible. And so we're going to start a new series to begin our year. It's called Own Your Story. Because your story is what connects you to other people. But if you're anything like me, our story is very hard to own. It's hard to embrace because sometimes we can't make sense of our own story, or sometimes we wish our story looked different than it actually was. And So it's a challenge to actually own it. But I think what happens when we can own our story is that we transcend and include. And what that means is that as we grow, as we develop, as we evolve, we don't look back at who we were or what happened to us and say, that does not belong. That's not a part of my story. Instead, what we can do is we can integrate even the parts of our story that are difficult, that don't make sense. And so what I want to do for this series is to give you an opportunity to hear stories and to hear your own story in other people's stories, to find that empathy and to remember what it can be like to transcend and include. And so I want to give you an opportunity to do that. And we're going to start our series off by hearing someone's story. I have a special guest that I want to invite to the stage. Would you all, with a warm Aldea welcome, Olivia to the stage. So I wanted to start off by playing a little game, and you are the participants in that game, so you're going to have to help us out. And I want you to guess. We're going to give you a fact, or like a life thing, and you're going to have to guess, is it Jake or is it Olivia? Okay? I'm a little nervous. All right, I'll go first. Okay. And then we'll say the thing, and then you go. You just say out loud, and we'll take a consensus of what you know. All right, which one of us knows how to operate an excavator?
Oh my God.
I'm a little offended.
Okay, which one of us once was on a basketball team that lost 10 out of 10 games?
This is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to build us up. I don't know. Oh my, it's just going to get worse from here. Which one of us is unable to dive into a pool?
This is all true. The first time that he told me he doesn't know how to dive, I just was like, what do you mean?
Yeah, and then I showed her.
And then he showed me. And
it's something to see.
Yeah. Which one of us rode dirt bikes growing up? Yes.
And which one of us has never broken a bone? Yeah. I actually didn't want to include that one because, knock on wood. All right, so I want to introduce you to Olivia. A lot of you know her, but...
Well, hold on. First, I want to say, I know I sing up here, but it is something else to be speaking words, and I'm telling my body right now I'm not about to get eaten by a bear. And Jake said to me this morning, he said, well, 90% is just showing up, and that's an A. So if I don't speak at all from here on out, I still get an A.
Yeah, I think within a lot of schools, a 90 is an A minus, but I told her it's okay. It's still, no, I'm just kidding.
Well, A minus, I'll take that. So.
When we moved here, she actually said, I will do anything for Aldea but speak. That's the one thing I cannot do. So she's already, our first service of 2023, and she's already breaking boundaries for herself. So, yeah. So let's, you know a lot of people here. We've gotten to know people, but this is an opportunity to be known on a deeper level and to share some really deep parts of your story. So let's start with some of the bullet points, and then we can get into the specifics. Ready?
No.
Okay. Do you want me to? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. These are my parents.
You got it. We're really close, so I can hold her hand. Do you want me to just keep going? Okay. She's the youngest of 3 girls, and she's the favorite.
Of course.
Which I can tell you is true. It's not, She lives in Washington her whole life.
That's actually a real hike, a real lake that you can
It's
go
not
to.
a green
It's not
screen.
a filter.
Okay.
It's really cool. I've led worship since I was in 6th grade. And fun fact, my audition was singing in the game of Rock Band. And
Like
then
you played Rock
we were
Band?
playing Rock Band, and I was singing.
And they were like,
and
that's
then
good enough.
They were like, you're going to sing on the worship team. And I was like, okay.
That wouldn't have worked for me in Guitar Hero, but...
And then, yeah, so this is my best friend, Jackie. I graduated from Western Washington University, and it was amazing. I loved it. I loved living in Bellingham for 4 years. It was like my first little blip away from home, and I was such a homebody. I didn't like to go to people's houses and sleep over when I was little. There were way too many nights where my mom had to come get me at like 3 a.m. and she was like, I'm not doing this anymore. You're not sleeping over at people's houses. You don't like it. So home was my safe space and where I felt the most comfortable. And, I'm extroverted, but I'm definitely a homebody. So, yeah.
When Olivia was a senior in college, she got one of those calls that you never want to get. And her sister called her to let her know that her dad had passed away. Her mom remarried. She now has 4 stepbrothers, so she has a bit of a Brady Bunch family. And that's them.
Yeah, so I gained 4 brothers, and very different than growing up in a house of 3 girls. And they're all really tall, so there's that. But yeah, so that's Walt. He's actually my dad's best friend. And so I knew all these boys growing up my whole life, and we kind of grew up together. And so it's been a really interesting journey, blending our families. And they actually lost their mom. I think it's been 2 years now. And so there's a whole lot of stuff in there. And it's been a really beautiful journey just to have all of our family come together and learn what it's like to live with each other through this journey and love each other and get to know each other. So
Then what happened?
what? Oh, yeah. And then it was, so the pastor at the church that I grew up going to, he was really close with my dad, and he kind of, I think he felt like this fatherly, he wanted to fill that role a little bit, and he was like, it was one Sunday he pulled me back off stage. I was about to go up and sing. It was so odd, and he was like, I'm going to find you a boyfriend in the next 6 months. And I was like, excuse me? What? Like, first of all, I don't need your help. And second of all, I don't know if I want that, in 6 months. And then he texted me when I was at work, and he was like, I have someone that I'm going to set you up with, and are you free on Saturday? And I was like, who is it? And he would not tell me. And so I was just like, okay, I'll go. And then, so I was set up on a blind date, and I met this guy there.
There you go.
Yeah, and
here we are. And then fast forward, and here we are.
Here we are. That was our I don't know what date that was, but that was the first meet
early.
Everyone day.
So this series is about really deep sharing, and in a lot of ways, you inspired this series because you, a while ago, brought this idea that you would want to share some of your story. Why do you think you wanted to do that?
I think I just wanted to be known, and it felt like my dad passing away was such a big thing to talk about, and it's such a big part of my story, and I just kind of felt like I've been holding on to this part of myself, and I've done that for long enough. I've been in church environments where I don't feel like I can be my full self or that I'm fully known, and so I really wanted to make myself really uncomfortable. I wanted to cry in front of people. It's always really fun. So here we are. Yeah.
So with the name of this series being Own Your Story, is there a part of your story or your life that you find is difficult to own?
Yeah, I think, so I grew up in a really conservative, evangelical, mega Christian church. And with that, I think I didn't realize until recently how much people-pleasing I've done in my life. And when you start to peel back the layers, you realize, like, you're living your life in so many ways for so many other people, and what part of it is really you, like what part of that is your authentic self and what's not. And growing up in church, you look up at the leaders and you really start to idolize them and see them as this perfect being and see them as closer to God than you are. And
is that why you went on a date with me?
Yeah. And and so there's really this like in-group and out-group kind of mentality. And then I started, leading worship, and I started being a small group leader. And as I was doing that, you start to think you were looking up at other people for the answers, but now other people are looking at you for those answers. And it put me in this position where I had to like play the role and put on the show and try to be what I thought the leaders that I was looking at were being. And so it just like, I think the biggest thing for me is because I started going to this kind of church at such a young age, where I was developing everything I thought about the world, or everything I knew about the world, I was learning from this one place, because it was where all my friends were from, all of my parents' friends were from, and just our whole entire community. Because it was such a big church, there's so many people that, you know a lot of people there, and everything is just centered there. And so I just, I was not being my true authentic self, but I didn't even know it. And so looking back, I think, I'm still pretty bitter, because I feel like that experience kind of robbed me from just being a kid and growing up and learning who I am based on, who I really am, rather than like trying to be something. So, yeah. And even, when we met at this church, and he worked at a specific location up in Lake Stevens, and that was when you were an associate pastor, and it was sort of like your first big role in a pastoral role. And for me, we had just started dating, and there was all of a sudden like this big expectation on me that I was going to be this pastor's partner. And that was also at the time where I was most like done with all of that and just ready to have something different. And I was starting to kind of see underneath, and I couldn't do it. Like, there was something in me. I stopped leading worship. I just remember the day when I was up on stage and I was like singing these words, and I just was freaking out, because I'm like, they know, I don't believe this. Like, they know. And I was so freaked out, and I couldn't do it anymore. And I really stopped going. And I had to choose myself.
What's interesting, though, is if you look at where we are right now, literally.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
the journey obviously has continued and so much healing has come.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can stand on this stage or sit on the stage and say, yeah, there is still some pain, there is still some bitterness, and still be here and still using your voice in many ways. I think it's incredible. And what I would just say to you, and what this really makes me think of, is there are times in our life that we don't even know what our authentic self is going to look like in a new season. And then what we need to do, sometimes all we can do is reject the inauthentic self, is to recognize where are those areas where I'm not being myself, and how can I move past that. And it's a painful thing because often our inauthentic self, like Olivia said, is tied up in community. So it can be really difficult to let that go. But when you experience shifts, perhaps a shift in your faith, once you taste, you can't untaste. Once you see, you can't unsee. And you need to keep going, even if it is painful. And yet for all of us, it's a different journey. For all of you, we may have all had unique things that brought us to a shift and in faith. For you, will you talk about a moment where your faith changed and evolved and shifted?
Yeah, I mean, it really was when my dad passed away, and he was up snowmobiling at our cabin, and something that we did all the time. He was on a guy's trip, and he was really high up in the mountains, and it wasn't like any big snowmobile crash or anything like that. He just he felt like something was happening, and he told his friend, like, I don't feel good, and then he had a heart attack, and he was just too far out there for search and rescue to be able to get to him on time. And so it was really that experience, and just in a moment your whole world shifts. And it wasn't like, I didn't feel mad at God for like taking my dad or anything. That was never a feeling that I had. I think I personally believe like everyone just has their time, and that was his. And in that moment, my family like really leaned on the people at our church, and I'm so grateful for all those people too. They had known us for so long, and my dad, he was really big part of the church. My family was a really big part of the church, and so everyone really rallied around us, and I felt so grateful for that, and really, really leaned on the faith that I had to get me through those first, just like, you're so raw, those first few months. And I think, as time went on, I started because everything I ever knew had changed so quickly, and it just blew my whole world open, including my faith.
Okay, I found this on the web, Fran. Check it out.
Pull the aux cable out on the right of the laptop.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh my God.
Series resonates with what you're saying.
Yeah.
She's like, I get it.
Yeah. And so it changes everything. And I think like I also am really grateful that it happened too, because I can't even imagine the life that I'd still be living sort of trapped in all of those ideas. And I'm grateful for it in a way, even though it's so painful, and it's always painful. But I think what started happening was I was feeling like my relationship with God and my status on how good of a little Christian girl I was like the thing that was keeping me from connecting with my dad. So if I wasn't a great Christian, then I wasn't going to be able to connect with my dad. And if I was, then God would let me. Or I don't know.
Like
I just started having these...
Like your view of spirituality and reality was that your dad's on the other side.
Yeah.
And God sort of stands between you as a gatekeeper.
Right. Because I think like that was always taught to me, not necessarily like with someone who dies, but God is the gatekeeper. God is the judge. God is all of these things. And I just was like, oh my gosh. And when that started happening, I really didn't resonate with that. And there were so many things that I just started going like, oh my gosh, this just doesn't feel like me anymore. And what started happening was really like, I would have these experiences where I feel like I would really feel my dad. And it just kind of turned into connecting with my dad was my new spirituality. And it is a kind of love that, I can understand because I had it in real life. And it just helped me know and understand what being loved like really felt like. And, growing up in church, you're told like God knows who you are. But it's hard to conceptualize that. And, I know that my dad knows who I am. And not that I think my dad is like the God out there, but just for me, like he's the biggest representation of the godly love and the fatherly love. And
yeah, in a way, when we were talking about this, you had said in a way, your experience with your dad and having these new experiences with your dad, even after having passed, dismantled a small version of God that couldn't support that type of connection. Mm-hmm. And I think for all of us, we have these experiences in life, whether it's a loss or it's a change of some kind. And some of these experiences are so difficult, so challenging. They break our current view of reality. It's like we need to rebuild with an expanded view to make space for something so big, so maybe so painful or just so mysterious. And so that loss, it made you question some of the assumptions you might have had. There's a quote that really came to mind. This is by the author Khalil Gibran. He says, "The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain." So there's some kind of relationship between the depth of difficulty that we go to and the depth of appreciation that we're able to have for life. And for those of you out there who've experienced a loss like this, it's probably easy for you to understand what she's talking about because, again, empathy is what brings us together. So people know you, and they see you as this person who, until today, they thought, oh, she's so confident, and she stands on stage with ease. But now you're letting yourself really be known. You're showing some of your true self. So what's a hidden battle that a lot of people wouldn't imagine just having gotten to know you?
Mm-hmm. I'm just really afraid of a lot of things. And, I'm really afraid of the dark. I literally every time, I don't know why I do this, but every time I like go downstairs, an image of myself like falling all the way down the stairs just replays every single time. I don't know why. It's just, I realizing now like how much fear I have in me and just having to kind of allow it to exist and to keep going through life. And really like when you have such a sudden loss, it's not a great argument to make, but I've done this with myself a lot of times, and it's like, well, everyone says like, that'll never happen to me. And then when the unthinkable happens to you, all the other unthinkable things are now fair game. And it's like, oh my gosh, if this could happen, then like this can happen, and this can happen, and this can happen. And it just, you can go down a really dark road with that. And I think I'm just learning to live life amidst the fear, and having people around me helps me feel less scared, and being honest about the things I'm afraid of. When you speak truth, to those things kind of helps. And I think I feel more free now than I ever did. And I think it's because that kind of breaking my world just let me put all the pieces back together where I wanted them to go and where I see fit, rather than where someone else placed that thing in my life. And obviously it never feels less painful, but time it does heal things, and I don't want to say time heals all wounds, because there's always going to be like a little bit of a wound there. And yeah, that's...
I was thinking a lot about this, and just in my own journey of being in therapy and just working on myself, and as we're both working on ourselves, something that has really occurred to me that it's kind of a hard pill to swallow, but there is something beautiful about it, is that these things that we grapple with, for you, it might be fear and grief. For me, there's a lot of anxiety in my life. These things that we grapple with, they might never completely disappear, because in a way they're connected to parts of ourselves that are good. There is a positive aspect. I mean, you have this grief because of this deep love you have. You have this fear because you're aware and you're sensitive to life. I have an anxiety because I care, and so I'm anxious. And so instead of wanting to get rid of these things, what if we can realize and acknowledge these things will be with us, but we can change our relationship to them. We can embrace them. We can integrate them into who we are. So, thank you. Thank you. Can we all thank her for sharing? I want to create a little moment of response here. Some of the stuff that Olivia was sharing might be really difficult for you to hear today, and I want to just create a moment for you to just exhale and release some of that, some of the tension you might be feeling in your body. If this triggers anything for you, I want you to feel free to, go through this next response time in however you need to. But I was thinking about how so much of what she shared and the grief that she experienced really is just a reminder to be grateful for those who are in your story, who have impacted your story, and to let them know how grateful you are for them. So I want to do something right now. This is the only time I'll probably have you do this, but pull out your phone if you feel comfortable. And I want you to take the next couple of minutes. I want you to do one of two things. I want you to either compose a text to someone that's important to your story and just tell them how much they mean to you. Tell them thank you. Tell them I still think about you. Tell them you matter to me, or you matter. I don't know what you're going through, but you matter. Or pull out your notes app or, whatever that is, and write a letter to someone who has passed and tell them how thankful you are for the impact they had in your life. Or whatever else you might need to do in this moment to just sit with some of the things that were shared. And over the next few minutes, we're just going to sing a song while you do that. When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see, no, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. So darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. If the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, and the mountains should crumble to the sea, I won't cry, no, I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand by me. So darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. So darling, stand me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me. Darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me. So if you've spent some time with us recently, you know that after the end of our message, we go into discussion groups, and I think there might be a lot for us to discuss. And so if you want to do that, if you want to gather around a table, turn your chair around, whatever's comfortable for you. Although I do know we did go a little long today because we were just having a good time sharing. And so I want to say that, you know, if you want this to be the end of the service for you and you need to leave, that's totally fine. And if you want to continue to stay, we will continue with discussion groups. So that'll be the next thing. And here are the questions. Have you had an experience, such as a loss, that caused a shift in your faith or spirituality? And 2, do you see yourself in any parts of Olivia's story? Is there anything about what she said where you resonate and you go, oh, I can feel that. I feel the empathy there. So go ahead and let's break into discussion groups and we can chat about that.